Hello and welcome back. In our previous session, we have seen the different properties that are there for a T-file input delimited component and how do we print it in various forms using tlogRow. Now we will go ahead and create a T-file output delimited. I know the component name, I'm going ahead and typing it. If you don't know the component name, you always have the options to go ahead and search it in the palette. Go under the file group and you can see various input and output components. So it's T-file output delimited. Here it is. Now we have this on our designer window. All I want to do is read the contents of this file, print it on the console, and also print it in a output file. Write it to a output file. So you see we have joined these three components. So read it from here, print it on the console, write it to output file. We have to specify the path where we want to write this to output file and where it has to be stored. So I want this to be stored in, I have output repository. This is empty now. This is an output directory that I've created in my local machine. I'll select this path and I want to give the file name as out file. Well, I want this to be a txt file. So let me give me the extension as txt. We have seen that we are reading the file is a CSV file and we want to write it to a txt file. We have seen that the file we are reading is a comma delimited, but I want the output to be a pipe delimited. Give a pipe delimited. I'll leave the row separator as it is. I also want to include header. So this option helps in writing the header also. Now you see here, I go ahead and click and edit schema. This automatically, because I have a row connection, a main connection created from tlogRow, because tlogRow has already have the schema that has come from the T-file input delimited, this automatically creates my schema here. Now let me do something. Come to T-file, click on edit schema, add another row. Let me put this as ID and I want this to be a integer and I click on OK. See, now it's asking, would you like to propagate changes? I say no. And now it gives me a error. This says, it's a warning. It's not an error. It says the schema for the input row 1 is different from whatever the schema that it is defined for tlogRow component. It says that the schema from input, whatever this input is row 1, so this is row 1, is different from what we have defined in this component. So I'll go ahead and say sync columns. It again asks if I want to propagate the changes to next component. What is the next component? This component, output component. I would again say no. This gives me a warning. So here I'll come back and see the schema. I don't have the age here. Always option 1. Click on this and click on this button. This will go ahead and copy this here. What does this do? It will copy all the columns that are there here at one stretch to this side. The left-handed side is our input and the right-handed side is our output. In case we want to copy one particular column, we select that column and click on this. So I select this and I click on this. So ID has come here. In case I want to copy all of this to this side, just click on this. This will copy all the columns, input schema to the output schema. Try it on, it's pretty easy. I'll click on OK. So now everything is in sync. You have understood if you use a T when there is a message asking if it wants to propagate the changes, when you click on yes, it would go ahead and propagate to the entire row of components that are here. If you don't say no, it gives a warning and you always have to come back and do a sync columns or do a manual edit. Edit on this and then put this up here. Let me say I delete this here. I click on OK. we have a warning again, which says that the schema is different from the input schema. Here the input is row 2. So I come here and then do sync columns. So the warning has gone. And then if I go and click on edit schema, I have the ID option available here. So I would say, let's leave it like this, cancel, and I come back to input file. I click on edit schema, and then I go to this ID and I delete this. And then I click on OK. It again asks me, whenever there is a change in the schema that we're doing, Talend gives us a propagate option. If we want to propagate this change to the further components that are connected in our job, I would say yes. There are no warnings. Everything is in sync. Let's come back and see. ID has gone from tlog row. This is to print. And ID has also disappeared from toutput file delimited. Before we run this, best practice is always come back to tlog row component, go to view tab and give it a name. This is our output file. Well, we set to run this. I think everything is ready. Go ahead and run this job. There you see, we have data printed to the console, and we have also this part is executed. Let's go ahead and see if we have a file created here. So this is our sample data, and yes, it's the output file. Let me read this output file. There you go. We have the header and we have the data separated using a pipe. So this is a comma, which is input. This is out file, which is the output of the Talend job. And this is in a .txt file, and we have the data using a pipe separator. Okay, everything good so far? So here, when you have the execution completed, you always see how many rows that are read by the input file and how many rows that are written to the output file. And this gives the time, the seconds, how much time it took to read that particular file and how much time it took to write to that particular file. Let's do a quick use case. Let's say you have an input file with 1,000,000 records and you just want to read the top 50 records of it. Option is go to limit and edit it. So now, because I have 5, I just want 3 records to be written to my output file. And now, because I already have an out file created, let me go ahead and create a out file 1. And this, let's go ahead and use, which one should we use? Let's go ahead and use colon. Sounds good? Or let's go and use a semicolon. Well, yes. Is everything ready? Clear? Run it. There we go. We only have 3 rows read from the input file. And let's go ahead and see if we have the data created here. There it is, out file 1, and do a edit. There it is. So the first output file, we have a pipe delimited, and the second time we changed it to read only the top 3 rows, that too with a semicolon. There you go. These are the different use cases that we can play around using Talend with the input and output delimited files. So a quick recap again. So T file output delimited is used to write the contents from an input to a output file. The file can be of any extension. It can be a .txt, .csv, or a star, which can be read by a notepad file, or it's just a flat file. Row separator is where we want to specify how do we want to separate the rows, and field separator is where we specify how do we want to separate the columns in the data. And include header helps in adding the header to the output file. If the input file has a header, and if we want to write the header to the output file also, we would use a include header option. And we have an append. What this would do, if we are trying to write to the same output file, if we want to append the data, go ahead and click on append. This would go and add the data at the bottom to our existing output file. Well, that's all about the T input file and T output file delimiteds.